Hi, welcome into More Than Mortgages. I'm Chad Anderson. Today we're going to talk about appraisals and maybe a boring topic, but one that you should know about, especially if you're a real estate agent, if you're in the mortgage business and you didn't live through the COVID years of purchasing, and 100% if you're going or expecting to buy a home in the next 12 to 24 months, because things could get hectic and appraisals are going to have a huge impact on your loan and your cash to close and your bid and your competition and all those different things. So, with that said, let's bring in another expert. He's the guy. There's Zach Jones. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good. This is a good topic today because I think I just kind of see it coming up on the horizon that we might be in a little bit different situation than we've been for the last year and a half. And we might get some flashbacks to the traumas of 2021, 2020 and 2021.
It was intense.
Yep.
It was intense. Before we dive in, I'd like to remind you, make sure you like, subscribe, follow, hit the bell, DM, comment, reach out to us on our platforms. He's at Zach Jones Loans. I'm at This Chat Is Real. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook are our main hangouts. Although Zach does a better job of venturing over to TikTok and China than I do. So,
Yeah.
all right. So here's the thing. Appraisals are it's one of those topics that only comes up to me really in a hot market, because when you go from a hot market to a cooler market, and again, especially in the Southeast and Nashville, and I've got a lot of friends and family in Huntsville, and Zach and I are both licensed in Florida as well, in the Panhandle and the Orlando area. A lot of those markets are still very good, very strong. When a market though cools, well, prices flatten or even tick down just a hair. And again, they haven't ticked down hardly, at all, except maybe in some very specific scenarios. But overall, it's been pretty steady. And you still have those appraised values and the sales and the comps from when the market was hot. So you have no trouble at all. Like, it always hits value, right? Like, I think in the last, I don't know, Zach, 18 months, I've seen 2-3 low appraisals. I've seen more. Yeah, that's it. Maybe, right? Well, if we're in the cooler market, the quote cooler market right now, and it's going to heat up, the problem is in that immediate ramp up is you're going to have issues because the market is going to outrun the comps, and the comps being the comparables. That's short for comparables. So the market outruns the comparables. So if you want to sell your house in a neighborhood for $500,000, but the last 4 sales over the last 120 days have been on average around 480, 485. How is an appraiser supposed to get to 500? And they can't. They can't until there are enough sales. And so somebody's got to be the guinea pig, right? Or you got to have a handful of guinea pigs to go out there and essentially, quote unquote, you may feel like you're overpaying because the value doesn't hit the purchase price. But in reality, if the market keeps ramping, you're underpaying for what it's going to be worth in 6 months to a year to 2 years. So I know you saw a lot of that too, Zach. I mean, 20 and 21 and even parts of 22, these things happen. And a lot of times comparable values can't keep up with what's going on in the real estate market.
Yeah, it's particularly hard on the front end of that hot market because the prices heat up and there's nothing that you can look back on, in the last few weeks or last couple of months to justify the value. It's just that people are paying more for the house. And so this is where you get into this. It's a difficult discussion if you're outside of the industry and don't really know how appraisals and the difference between home prices and home values, it kind of gets a little bit confusing. But, we've seen this year a lot of price cuts on houses that are listed. And that gives people the illusion that prices are going down. They may be going down in some particular market, but I just did a video yesterday that talked about, and I may have put it up maybe this morning, that talked about the national average of value in the United States appreciated almost 7%. The 3 most reliable indexes gave it 7%, and there was one outlier at 6%. So we still had home values across the United States going up at a higher or hotter than normal clip of 4.5 to 5%. That's considered normal. So they go up 6.8%. And yet we saw price cuts across the board for houses. If they've been on the market 3 or 6 or 8 or 10 weeks, they had a price cut. So
Right.
what you have to look at that is a potential that if values are going up, but the prices that a particular home is getting a price cut is probably overpriced to begin with. So that was probably the seller's unrealistic expectation about what the house might bring, because they're still stuck in the hot 2021 market and they haven't adjusted to a more moderate and temperate 2023 or 2024 market. So this whole idea of price and value it's difficult to kind of get your head around unless you really understand it. But the peril with appraisals really comes in when the market heats up quickly and that $400,000 house might even be bid up 10%. So now it's $440,000.
Yep.
And the appraiser says, there's nothing that's sold in this area that's comparable to this, that's a like kind property at that price. I just can't pull the value out of it. So we've got to do some tricks and some maneuvering and some manipulation of the loan in order to make that work and watch those values boost. The other thing that I think that I saw in those first few months was appraisers were, I don't know that in the modern era we had ever seen values go up 20 or 22 or 24% in a single year. And so I think that appraisers were like, this is unsustainable. It's crazy. This is all going to stop. We're going to wake up one day and all of this value is going to vaporize. And what didn't happen was the value vaporizing. It kind of continued to ramp up for another year after that. So we had 2 years of the most aggressive growth in value that we'd ever seen. And about the time that the appraisers kind of catch up with that, then we do wake up and it feels like it just stopped with interest rate rises.
It does. Appraisers also, I do feel bad for them because they end up taking such a lashing. Everybody, they become the memes of the real estate social media. They really do.
Beat up. They get beat up more than the mortgage people do. We get thrown under the bus. They get thrown under the whole train.
Yeah. And let's also go ahead and throw something out here for the real estate agents, realtors. And I know the good ones already know this, but realtors, look, Zach and I don't control the appraiser. Okay. We don't talk to the appraiser.
No.
We don't know who the appraiser is or is going to be. We want the home to appraise as badly as you do. That's always my favorite joke that I tell with other agents, where when they get mad because it's a low value. And look, here's the thing. Here's what's great is that when you have a low value, if you have a true justification as to why the value should be higher, you can turn the comps in. And I actually have seen, more than you would think, instances where, hey, they'll look at it and say, yeah, okay, I can give you an extra 10 grand or 20 grand or 5 grand. I mean, if you want an extra 100, probably not. But it just depends on the circumstance and how justified is your argument. But I always laugh, when you get that and you hear the comment, this lender's appraiser. Like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like,
it's not our appraiser.
No, guys, like, and this is for the buyers as well. Like, look, we want the home to close. Like, no loan officer in the country is sitting around going, man, I hope this thing comes in a little light this week. That'd be great. Because one, you're going to be pissed.
Yeah.
You may not get the house. The seller's going to be pissed. Two, it's not even up to us, but the lender, along with the appraiser, a lot of times will take the black eye over this. And all we did was click a button to order something. And so this is what happens in a hot market. Okay. You get values and purchase prices, and they're trying to keep up with one another. And it's hard to do, like Zach was saying, because if you're constantly increasing, at what point, like there is a spot on the appraisal where the appraiser can mark, the heat of the market. How is the market doing? Is it very strong? Is it average? Is it cold at the moment? What's going on with the market? And so they can use that to help justify, but it just doesn't always work out
Right.
that way. Yeah.
Right. Right. Well,
So
there's another kind of aspect to this hot and cold market too is turn times on appraisals. So
great point.
appraisers are really hungry right now because the volume has been low now for a year or 14, 16 months, whatever it is. And so turn times are really fast. We'll put in an appraisal order. It'll get accepted as soon as they can schedule it. They might be out there tomorrow morning and we get the appraisal report tomorrow afternoon. I mean, I've
Right. It's happened.
seen it happen that fast. And
Yep.
it's very rarely that we have even a week delay on an appraisal. It might be,
Yep.
in a rural area or something. So turn times are very fast. And, it's interesting. I don't know if you saw this morning, Chad, but I was watching a video of the founder of the largest mortgage company in America with whom we have a business relationship talking about turn times in the industry on mortgage loans, 44 days average turn time. And I'm
I
sitting
saw
over
that.
here
That's
working
nuts.
for
That's
it's
nuts.
unbelievable. I'm over here at Modern Lending saying, you give me 21 days, I might come in early. So let's be ready to close it. And so much of that is due to appraisal turn times. The only time that I even get nervous in this market is maybe with a VA appraisal turn time because they have their own system. But even they're smoking it right now. So
Yeah.
that changes when you get into a hot refinance market, then purchases also slow down. And it takes a lot of manipulation and kind of engineering behind the scenes to keep everything on track, because we saw in the last refinance boom, Chad, where we were seeing refinances 45, 60 days out because they were prioritizing purchases in front of those. And it just had a hard time getting it through the system. And appraisals were taking 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And we had to manage it on internally and say, let's prioritize the purchase appraisals because those have a time limit on it. And refinance has got to sit back in the back a little bit and we'll extend your lock. So
You,
a lot of manipulation about that topic.
you know what's so interesting too about what you're talking about and what we heard this morning with the turn times thing. What's so crazy to me about that is I see people posting on social media about how they got a contract to close in 15 days. And I just think like that honestly should be kind of normal right now.
Standard.
Like
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
no everybody's last year they were more bored. It has picked up over the last 60 days. But everybody's still kind of bored. Like they're still taking phone calls and quoting rates and putting deals together. And there's been a few refinances that have made sense and some different things. But overall, things have been obviously much slower in the last year and a half than what they were in 20 through half of 22.
Right.
I just think I have found it funny that people have been bragging so much, and we're guilty of it as well here and there, like bragging about your turn times. But it's like, well, if you're slower, why wouldn't you be faster at your speed
Right.
and whatnot?
Right.
But you're right. I mean, at this point, going from contract to close literally in 2 weeks. We had one a few weeks ago. It was a VA deal. The day I received the contract to the day we closed the loan was 15 calendar days.
Yeah.
And so that's good for a VA loan because like you said, VA runs at its own pace. So
Right.
you kind of have to be a little lucky with VA, to be honest. Last thing on turn times, and you mentioned appraisals. Here's a couple of things to look for. If rates dip, like we're all anticipating, in the next 12 to 24 months being pretty wild. But if that happens, if rates do dip and so forth, well, when that does happen, you're going to see turn times slow, not just with underwriting and lenders, but appraisers and so forth. The other piece you have to keep in mind is if you're a refinance customer, you're going to be even slower because
Right.
they're going to put you at the back of the line because you're already in the home. Maybe you need the money for something drastic or you just want to save money, which I get, but you're still not going to be prioritized. That's just the ugly side
Right.
of the industry. They're going to
Right.
prioritize purchases. So that's one. The other piece too is you got to know who you're working with when that time comes And you also have to start looking at rate locks, because we have seen situations where I know of other local banks in this area who, when things were humming and it was crazy and you had purchases and refinances flying in all day every day, they were literally in a spot where their refinance pipeline was 90 and 120 days out.
Right. Right.
And then now circle back to the appraisal problem, okay, that you're going to run into. And on top of it is appraisals are only good for 120 days. So if your
Yep.
pipeline lags and then your appraisal is in, like, the point is you run into this loop, is what they call it in the coding world and the tech world, where it just keeps going and it never ends. So that's what can happen in a hot market, and that's more than just appraisals. But it becomes a good thing for society and the economy, and a good thing for us and realtors and so forth. But there are also a lot of pain points that come with this as well.
Right. Well, the bright side is that the appraisers are rested up, and they're ready to go, and they're hungry. We're
Mhm.
not. We're coming up on being out of hunting seasons. We got a little turkey season coming. I always joke about that, but listen, we're in Tennessee, and appraisers like to hunt. I don't know what it is, but we always see turn times slow down at the beginning of deer season. So, and those are the things that you got to factor into too. I mean, it
Mhm.
becomes a real. There's a real delay at Thanksgiving in Tennessee because you're at the end of the year. Everybody's made lots of money, and we're going to take some time off and go into the woods. So everybody is rested up, and if we kind of ease into this, Chad, it's kind of interesting to watch the Fed comments this week. If we kind of ease into this, it's going to be a better thing than if the floodgates just open overnight. That's not fun for anybody, although it's exciting and it's exhilarating. It comes with its own set of problems.
That's what happened in 2020. It
Yeah,
happened overnight. It just bottom fell out. I'll never forget the end of February, and it just started falling, and it was a
yeah,
free fall all the way
yeah.
through. Last thing and topic here with appraisals, recommendations in your experience, and I've got some, like, when you're writing contracts and offers, what are realtors and homeowners going to see with this appraisal piece? Because this is the risk, and I was talking to someone else about this earlier this week. You're going to run into situations where, when you submit an offer, if that little appraisal contingency box is checked, you're probably going to the bottom of the stack, because they're not going to want to hold their purchase hostage, or their sale
Right,
hostage, to an appraiser who, if things heat up, may have a hard time finding comparables for that sale.
right. There's a lot of so inspection contingency and appraisal contingency, very different things. The inspection
Yeah.
contingency is looking for problems in the house. And if you waive the inspection contingency, you can still get an inspection. The appraisal contingency for people who have a good down payment becomes less and less an issue as long as you're working with a really good real estate agent and you're very sure about your choice in house. If you want the house and the intrinsic value is there, and you're just kind of looking at this and saying, well, there's a 2 or a 3 or a 5 or a 7% difference. The market hasn't caught up to it yet, and I'm on the front end of this, but I really want the house, and you've got a good down payment, then we can work the numbers around with an appraisal, without the executing the appraisal contingency, make the deal work and get you to closing without much of a restructuring of the deal. Uh, Basically, it employs kind of an appraisal gap strategy. Sometimes you might be able to get a little bit off of the price when you get that appraisal in. I actually purchased a piece of investment property. I had a waiver of the appraisal contingency. The appraisal came back short, and I was still able to negotiate a little bit because I still wanted the house and the seller still wanted to sell it. So sometimes that can happen. But it really is the answer to your question, Chad, is how do we do this? In a hot market, if you're on the front end, you work really closely with your loan person and make sure that they're a savvy, experienced professional and they know how to work these numbers, and make sure that the agents are also understanding and writing those contracts accordingly. And all of that whole time in 2020 and 2021 was very interesting because I had more conversation with agents than probably any other concentrated time in my career, because we were really working together as a team on how to write contracts. What do we need to check? What do we don't need to check? And how do we bring the borrower in there and help them understand what an appraisal gap strategy is?
Yep.
It's easy to understand, but it's maybe not so easy to explain when you haven't done one in a while. So it's just great communication and open strategizing, I think.
Yeah, that's my biggest takeaway. Is that when it comes down to it and you're getting ready to make an offer in the market that heats up or that gets kind of going again, if you have 20% down payment, the worst thing that's going to happen to you is the value comes in low and you either have to dip into some other funds to keep it at 20% down payment plus the appraisal gap, or you put less money down, or I'm sorry, you put the same amount of money, dollars down, but the percentage changes, your loan to value changes, and you end up having to pay PMI. By the way, PMI is your best friend in the world. You should love PMI. I can get on that soapbox later, but PMI is
It's such a
amazing.
minor thing. Yeah, it's
PMI is
such a minor
amazing.
thing when you're looking at buying a house and
Yeah.
now you've got an extra $27 a month because
There,
you're at 18% instead of 21% down payment. It's ridiculous. That's
the
not a deal killer.
I've done 2 loans with PMI in the last 30 days where I showed people numbers and they wanted PMI by the time we were done talking,
Right,
because PMI was allowing them to borrow money from themselves at a 1.02% annual percentage rate.
right.
That's you can't
Yeah,
borrow 1% anywhere. Like
yeah.
you can't borrow $60,000 for 1%. That's why PMI is amazing. But going back to the appraisal strategy, if you've got the money, that's your worst case, is you're going to end up in that PMI bucket, and again, that shouldn't be a worst case. That's a good thing. Cause it's
Right,
cheap money. The negative or the concern is going to be for the buyers who have the minimum down payment, because that's where you're going to run into the issues of, I got 5% down. I don't qualify for 3% down. The seller doesn't want me to go FHA. And so now I'm in a spot where I got to come up with extra money and I don't have it. And that's
right.
where the concern and the scary pieces can be. Um, and another episode that we're going to talk about, by the way, next week, we're going to hit on what to watch out for with lenders and how numbers can kind of be manipulated and whatnot, and kind of who you're working with. So I think that'll be a very interesting
Mhm.
show and a good one. Um, the other piece though is when you're talking about some of these like really tight numbers, and how it works and the appraisal gaps and whatnot. Um, you know, you've got to make sure about earnest money, because if it's refundable or non-refundable, like, you got to have outs in the contract.
Yeah,
You got to have some different things that, you got to be prepared, basically. And like Zach was talking about, have a strategy, because if you just kind of run in guns blazing. And another good topic, I think I'm just sitting here naming our future library, but will be, how do you get equity out of your current home to use it for the next loan? So that's actually a tricky topic that people don't realize. But that's one we can hit on as well and kind of
yeah.
share with you. So anyway, quick final thought.
That's it, man. That's a good wrap on appraisals. It's a big topic, and I think this is where you started, man. It's like, order the appraisal. Appraisals come in. The value's good. Let's go. And
Yeah.
that's about as much as people ever talk about appraisals. Or you got $7,000 equity because it appraised at 317 instead of 310. What you're paying for it? Big whoop, right? But there's a lot to it, and it's a critical hinge pin, because if you don't have the value in the house per the appraisal report, then you've got to figure out a way to find it. It's just not the loan can't go forward because the investor wants the value in the house. That's what they're loaning on.
They are, and their expectations, may
Yep.
may be off, but there may be 5 other people willing to meet their
Right.
expectations.
Right.
Just, it's all
Right.
about what somebody's willing to pay for is the key. So,
Right.
all right, thanks for hanging out with us again. Like, follow, subscribe, hit the bell, DM, comment. Love for you guys getting in comments or sending us messages. I know some of you have and have texted us or reached out to us. We truly appreciate it. It does help kind of make it worth it to do these every single week. So we enjoy it and enjoy the collaboration. So thanks for hanging out. He's Zach. I'm Chad, and we'll be back next week. Take care.